Hello everybody, welcome to my short talk on sustainability and how biological sciences must work together in order to achieve it. I'm doing this presentation with Lydia Milan Fernandez and I will be introducing us both in the next slides. But before I do that, I want to welcome you all to Loughborough University and to the School of Sport, Exercise and Health Sciences. So, who are we? Well, I'm Inês Varela Silva and I'm a human biologist. If I have to describe in a couple of words what my research is about, I would say that I study health outcomes among families in low and middle income countries, mostly in Latin America. And I use a biocultural approach. We will see what this means in the next slides. The main focus of my research is to show and to study how poverty and discrimination can lead to child malnutrition and shape health and disease throughout the life course. Now, I've noticed here in this slide some words and terms that are highlighted in yellow, and I'm explaining now what they are. These are the key words that shape this talk. We will be defining them throughout this presentation, but for now, I would like you to just take a moment, write them down, because we will be needing them later on. So, biocultural approach, health, families, low and middle income countries, poverty, discrimination, and child malnutrition. Lydia is a biologist and she graduated from Universidad Autónoma in Madrid. She's currently doing an online master's at University of Edinburgh focused on biodiversity, wildlife and ecosystem health. She is also the coordinator of a program in Madrid that supports families at risk of social exclusion. Again, the word family is highlighted, and another term that is highlighted here is social exclusion, and I would like you to now write it down. So what are the objectives of my talk? The objectives are two. First, to discuss how sustainability, or the lack of it, impacts on the health and well-being of individuals and populations. And secondly, to recognize that we need a tool or a mechanism to help us understand sustainability. That tool is the biocultural perspective, or the biocultural approach that we will be defining in the next slides. So again, just take a moment to write down the terms sustainability and biocultural perspective, or biocultural approach. So how do we define sustainability or sustainable development? According to the United Nations, it is defined as the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And for that to happen, we need to put in perspective these 5 components that are nicely shown on this colorful wheel. First of all, peace. We will achieve sustainable development when there is no more people in poverty or going hungry, when dignity and equality is ensured. Prosperity, when people are able to live prosperous and fulfilling lives in harmony with nature. This takes us to the planet. When we are able to protect the natural resources and the climate for future generations. For that to happen, we need partnerships with clear agendas implemented globally. And we also need peace, when all nations can foster peaceful and inclusive societies. So how can we do that? How can we start disentangling the drivers, opportunities and barriers of such complex topics? We need a tool or a mechanism to help us understand the impact of each of these components on the planet and in all its living beings, and we need to understand their combined effects. So my perspective, the one that I chose, is the biocultural approach. I'm going to give you a slightly narrow example, and I'm focusing only on health. And you see that the 5 components of sustainability still hold true. So when we use a biocultural approach, we recognize that there is a constant dynamism of interactions between biology and culture. So all of these components interact. A biocultural approach integrates biological, social, cultural, environmental, and other kinds of data, and recognizes that they influence one another. I will be providing some examples of these in the next slides. But before that, I want to summarize and put these keywords in perspective. So let's continue with the example of human health. Let's consider human health at the individual, familial, and population levels. So we defined sustainable development and the biocultural approach, which is the tool that we chose to use. And we now realize that we can only aim for prosperity if we understand poverty and how that affects health. We can only aim for peace when we understand social exclusion, conflict, and war. We can't have solid partnerships at the global level if we don't end discrimination in all its forms. And we can't have a sustainable planet if we keep having the low and middle income countries, mostly Africa, Latin and South America, and part of South Asia, bearing the brunt of the negative effects caused by unsustainable livelihoods, which are mostly driven by the high-income countries. We can't because it's unsustainable. I'm now showing you some examples of unsustainable biocultural impacts on people's health. And for that I'll be talking about the Maya people. I've been working with Maya people for the last 15 years. So, first of all, who are the Maya? The Maya are one of the largest living groups of Native Americans. There are more than 7 million Maya dispersed across what is now parts of Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, and Honduras. The Maya have a long history of social, economic, and political repression that started with the Spanish invasion in the 15th century. The Maya are the biological and cultural descendants of the classic Maya civilization, who built these amazing pyramids, and they were highly skilled in mathematics, architecture, and astronomy. Their current situation bears little resemblance to their classical origins, and they struggle with poverty, racism, and discrimination. Now, in this map here, you can see in greater detail where the current Maya live. So this is Mexico, this is the United States, and the Maya are in this corner of the map, mostly in the Yucatan Peninsula, Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, just on the bottom of the map. So in this photo, we see several Maya women making traditional corn tortillas in an open fire. They have been doing this for centuries. Corn is one of the staple foods of the Maya. However, since the mid-80s, the traditional Maya foods and beverages are being replaced by globalized foods, fast foods, and carbonated drinks. These changes have been so extreme and happening so fast that some anthropologists claim that Yucatan has been coca colonized. As a consequence, the health of the Maya people has been affected, with a sharp increase in overweight, obesity, and cardiometabolic diseases. Now, most Maya do not have access to regular health care. In this photo, we see a demonstration against the poor conditions of the health services. The sign says in Spanish, "First, there are no medication, and now there are no doctors. We are tired." In the last 20 years, the frequency and intensity of hurricanes hitting parts of southern Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize, due to climate change, have been disproportionately affecting the Maya, who tend to live in very precarious housing. This adds an extra burden on families in terms of basic nutritional needs, health, housing, and safety. Here we see a young girl feeding turkeys before going to school. Heavy workloads start in childhood and continue into adulthood. The cumulative effects of inadequate nutrition, lack of basic health care and sanitation, displacement caused by climate change, and heavy workloads since younger age cause exponential negative effects on the health of the Maya. The lack of sustainability is evident. the factors that contribute for that lack of sustainability have been identified and put in perspective, but we are at a crossroad now and action is needed. I'm showing you a diagram now that presents the relationship between environmental quality and human well-being from the past to what it's now and several scenarios in the future. We are at the crossroads, and there are many possible pathways for the future. We see that the quality of the environment is declining and human well-being shows improvements, although we know that these improvements are mostly seen in high-income countries. We can and must do better. If we choose wisely along the blue and the green trajectories, we will achieve a sustainable future. If we do not choose wisely, we are heading for dystopia. Now, the good news is that we do not have to start from scratch. We have the Sustainable Development Goals proposed by the United Nations, which are basically a to-do list for people and the planet. They are a blueprint for success. But we have to do the work. So when we finish listening to this talk, take half an hour and explore these 17 development goals. Go on the website and just hover your mouse on each of them and see what they aim for, and then make a decision to act. So to summarize, in this talk today, we defined sustainability in the context of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I suggested the biocultural approach as a useful and valid way to conduct research on complex interdisciplinary topics. I showed examples of how health and well-being of families and communities suffer when sustainability is not taken into account. The lives of the Maya people are an example of that, but I also showed that there is hope. So in this slide, I summarized the sources and references that I used in this presentation. You feel free to browse them and study in more detail. And I would like to thank you for your time and for your attention, and please do get in touch. I would love to speak more about these topics with you. Thank you.